Hello, and welcome back to Colonel O'Truth's Miniature Issues. In today's episode, I'm going to be building Highkeep Street, a secluded part of the city that sits almost at the roof of Undercrag. I'll be building steps and tiny handrails, a secluded passageway, stone walls, more houses, and finally blending it in. This is Undercrag City. As with so many of my pieces, it begins with a simple piece of foam core. I've trimmed it to shape and put in some guideline marks. And now I'm going to sketch my ideas. I want a passageway disappearing into the mountain with lighting inside it, similar to the stairs I built by the mill way below. I also want to fit at least one house on this piece, and a section of fortifications. After much head scratching, I've decided to add extra dimension to this by building upwards. It'll be more interesting that way. So here's a piece of foam I've cut to the rough shape I want. I've slashed the front and I've pulled it apart with my thumb to give a rock texture. Now I've marked out where I want my steps, cut out a wedge, and I start shaping them with my knife. They're not regular, they're not supposed to be. And rough up the edge as well. I'm marking right angles so that my walls can be relatively straight. Again, I'm just sketching ideas here. Now that I know where my path will be, I peel off the paper and I attach the second piece. Time to start designing the fortifications. I've decided that where I cut out a doorway, I was wrong. I was going to get in the way of the wall behind. Working a little bit at a time, I'm building up a tower that goes upwards but also outwards, to follow the characteristic outward slope of Undercrag Mountain. I'm happy with that. I'll start drawing in stonework. And on the steps. And on the path. Now I'm making doors and windows. I've shown this technique before. I've got a paper template and small pieces of card cut from a cat food packet. There's my door again, back in. just a rectangle of balsa for the door, and the archway covers it. The same for the windows. There's a lot of stonework at this stage. As you've seen from the final photographs, much of this disappeared. But I didn't have an overall clear idea of what I was doing here. I just started building. That's kind of the way I work. Fixing the joins with some terracotta das clay and PVA. And drawing in stonework again. Not bad so far. I've added a few extra steps. Now to blend the various pieces together, again with clay and PVA. I just put blobs where I want them and smooth them out with a brush. The back wall of the passageway is intended to give the impression that you're walking into the mountain itself. With the clay in place, I'm adding sand, a good coating of PVA wherever I want it, and sprinkle it on. Some of this will become moss, some will become earth. Now to my house. At this point, I thought I could only fit one house on. So I'm going through the usual process of a black card framework and balsa wood detailing. I've kept the template of the houses in terms of height and style very much the same throughout the entire city. I wanted the element of the architecture to have a certain amount of uniformity, while everything else around it is completely organic. Now everything gets grey base coat. And the house gets light grey. Almost forgot my supports. Short pieces of matchstick. And I almost forgot my door as well. A small piece of balsa wood, with planks drawn in by hand, simply glued in behind the door frame. As usual, I'm leaving a tiny gap at the bottom so that light from my LEDs will show. And it's on to the roof tiles. Just like with Pipistrelle Street, I decided I wanted at least a flash of orange roof here to tie it in with everything in the rest of the city. As usual, these are just small pieces of card from a cat food packet, 3mm by 6mm. And it's back to my fortress. The dark grey is dry, so now it's time for a light grey dry brush. I'm being quite heavy-handed. The door gets light grey. It'll eventually match the woodwork on the house. And after the grey, white. You can see I've also painted some of the areas of earth in a rich brown. And now I'm turning my attention back to the house, coating the whole thing with brown ink. And the door of the fortress. With the brown dry, a heavy dry brush of pale yellow, getting plenty into the panels. And that is also followed by white. And focusing on the panels, the woodwork will take care of itself. Let's see how that looks. At this point I decided it wasn't quite right. The layer of rock between the fortress and the cloister below looked too thin. So I'm moving this piece up and out. I'm building up extra layers with offcuts of foam board, marking one to the next and gluing them together. And I'll check that against the rest of the model. And make some adjustments. When I'm happy, I peel off the paper for my street. And cut steps. I hope you're enjoying watching the growth of Undercrag City. If you are, please do subscribe, give us a like, maybe share with friends. It all helps to grow the channel. And please do leave comments and questions below. I answer all of them, and I really enjoy hearing from you. We've got some good conversations going. Back to the model. It's looking pretty solid, but I've created some extra space. So let's put another house in. It's not much of a street with only one. I thought I'd line up the houses via the back wall and more or less have them in line with each other. But I decided against this. I'm creating another paved area. This will sit in front of the second house. After some experimentation, I've got my second house, and I've started the painting process. Now it's time to add more paving. This section is wider than it needs to be, but I often find it's good to take my detailing further than I have to and cover it up later. There's the dark grey again. And the pale yellow for the second house. This house has heavy timber beams at the top floor. The rock will come down and sit on top of this. Now that both houses are dry, I'm inking in all of the timber work with brown ink. I start with the faces. Notice how I hold my brush sideways to the part that I'm painting. The ink goes on nice and easily this way, and I get fewer mistakes. And here's my nice bright rust ink. Just for something a little different, the front door is pale blue. Now for some hinges. Thin black card. Touch of silver paint. And a touch of rust ink, just to take the shine off. Now I'm gluing the houses into place, but if you've watched these videos before, you'll notice I've missed something. I forgot to glue the window glass in. This made it something of a fiddle when I realized after everything was dry. But there it is. I'm blending my joins with sand. My brown sections are highlighted with a lighter tone and then yellow. Notice that I'm not worried about letting the colours run over each other. Black wash, green and yellow washes on the moss, dark brown on the earth. Now with the colour added to the alleyway, I'm closing it in and adding my LED. That looks pretty cool. With LEDs added to the fortress, I'm adding a large roof. This is the rocky overhang, the mountain. I realized at this point that it was starting to look like buildings stacked on buildings. I needed to add a lot more natural rock. So I'm going to add some large rocky elements from foam, and then sculpt everything together with clay. Again, I hack up the surface with a knife and pull it apart with my thumb. I'm gluing this in at an angle. I've added several more large pieces of rock. When the glue's dry, I'm going to start sculpting the mountainside. A lot of my carefully drawn stonework is about to disappear. I'm adding plenty of clay, but I'm also leaving some rock areas exposed. I want different textures. I've shaped the rock around where the windows sit, as if the architect simply filled in the gaps in the natural rock. And here's my sand again. Random patches to become moss. That needs to dry. When dry, it's been painted dark grey, and I've gone over a lot of what I'd already done. That's okay. It's just the way my creative process works. With all the rock grey like this, it all looks quite foreboding. But as the ink washes go on, it'll brighten up. There are some dangerous looking spaces there. I haven't yet calculated to scale how high above the city this is, but it's a long way. So we need a handrail. I've poked holes into the model, and I'm putting pieces of basswood in. I'm trying to get them sort of straight. With the verticals in, I'm adding some higgledy-piggledy horizontals. And colouring it with brown ink. I've added brown for earth patches, and I'm highlighting again. And here's my pale yellow. I'm highlighting the fence at the same time. And after all that, it's time for my ink washes. Thin black first, over all of the grey, and I'm not worried if it goes over some of the brown. While it's still wet, dobs of green where I want my mosses to be. Having different concentrations in different places will give me variety. Now I'm daubing that with yellow, letting it run where it will, within reason. Almost done. Thin brown wash now, everywhere that I've got my earth. I'm allowing this to overlap into the green. And finally it's time to glue it in place. This is a very front heavy piece, so I've put a lot of PVA, but I'm also adding super glue. This should hold it while the PVA dries. Just to make sure, some masking tape. And some masking tape to hold the masking tape. So how does it look? I think the extra height that I added definitely helped. Next morning, 5 AM, it's blending time. Plenty of glue, blobs of clay, smooth it all into place. I've also discovered a nice little spot to continue my path. I'll just build that in. Some fiddly work now inside the model, where the new piece has joined to the rest of Undercrag City. I'm trying my best to catch the sand before it cascades into the rest of the city, but it's a bit pointless. So instead I've tilted the entire model backwards. When it's time to get the surplus sand out of there, I can actually lift the entire city and turn it upside down. It's surprisingly light. Grey paint again. I'm working carefully not to let drops fall onto the houses below. That's a fiddly bit. Making sure I get all the little bits. Dry brushing. Again, going over areas I'd already done. And ink washes. That was nearly a disaster. I'm having to put the ink on quite carefully, which doesn't give the best results. But it should all look fine in the end. More green. And then yellow. Finally, on my earth patches, I'm going to add some grass. And a few flowers. And we're done. Highkeep Street. Almost at the roof of Undercrag City. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.